Hey, it's me Alex, and in this video I'm talking about the filmmaker Frank Henenlotter. I'll be specifically covering his film Brain Damage, which I just finished watching for the first time, and I'll also be saying a few words about his more recent film, which is Bad Biology from 2008. Hey, I'm Alex, welcome to my channel. I cover cult cinema, world cinema, movies disregarded by the public at large. I'm also a passionate collector of films on disc, physical media, so if you're into movie talk, make sure you subscribe and also check out my playlist. Filmmaker Frank Henenlotter is someone I'm really interested in currently. I mean, this year I've been discovering his stuff. I only saw Basket Case, the first one, for the first time maybe 6 weeks ago, and that film I've heard so much of, so it was good to finally get to see it and discover for myself what a grimy, hilarious and original gem that one is. As for Bad Biology, that one I originally saw 2 years ago when I did my 31 Days of Horror Marathon, and I was blown away by that film. It was so sick and just in your face and hilarious and also touching. This is the thing about Frank Henenlotter, is that there is the punk attitude and there is a deliberate trash value to his work, but there is also a sort of humanistic approach which I think sets him apart from maybe more recent filmmakers who go down that road of exploitation, black humor, because I think Henenlotter's film have a bit more heart, and he does want you to be able to relate to those dilemmas his characters always face. I think I'll just say a few words about Brain Damage first, which I just finished watching this afternoon. Wow, what a film, what a vintage. It's made 1987, and some of the trappings of that year you can immediately spot if you watch enough 80s movies. Like, you see that sort of blue gel, which was very typical at the time to represent sort of night, but in this film it also stands for his drug-induced euphoria, and the whole plot is really coherent. There are bits there you can again sort of recognize from Basket Case, and it also in some ways looks forward to Bad Biology. Generally, I like, now that I've seen 3 of his features, maybe even 4, I really appreciate the coherence within his body of work, that there is always this Jekyll and Hyde thing, the freakish aspect of not being at home with your body and not being able to have a relationship or even integrate into society because of some kind of freak peculiarity. So there is the Cronenbergian aspect. I think Henenlotter is a valid artist, and in some ways there are definite parallels you can find with like parasitic organisms invading people's bodies, people's homes, people's minds. But in Henenlotter's case, it's deliberately a bit more slapstick, and I would say it's a little bit less European, with less monologues and less literary language, and a bit more of a straightforward structure building up to an over-the-top climax. But there is definitely some affinity, I think, between Cronenberg and Henenlotter, in my view. I really thought the protagonist of Brain Damage was quite easy sort of to relate to. Like, we don't get too much of the background on him. We don't really, there is a given that he has a girlfriend, he has a brother, and there is the parasite that latches onto him and leads to like sporadic murders, sucking people's brains out in sort of grotesque little scenes, and that's enough. It's also really interesting to see how Henan Lotha situates his films always in those kind of grimy, grungy, beat up streets, boiler rooms. So there is that aesthetic which is both authentic, and now it comes across as nostalgic. If you see his films in chronological order, which it's an interesting experience because you see the face of the city also become more and more anonymous, and it's both a shame, but it's also I think nice that the filmmaker sort of bears witness to that, that the change of the environment which fed so much into his work also reflects in his more recent work. And you also see, I think, the growing alienation. The protagonist of Basket Case, I forgot his name, the guy with the basket, the guy with curly hair, he's a little bit more connected to the world. He does try to reach out and have some kind of a relationship, and he's aiming for happiness, not just in like a drug-induced euphoria, but actually through meaningful connections with his potential girlfriend in that case. And as the time moves on, as we go from Basket Case to Brain Damage to Frankenhooker to Bad Biology, the central figure becomes a little bit more I think stylized and more detached. They have less interest also to try and stay one with the fabric of the society around them. The society is also always pictured as grotesque. So on the one hand side, we have those kind of visual manifestations of monstrosity through those special effects, often created by Gabe Bartalos. And on the other hand side, we have people who are nominally normal, who are not deformed, they don't have any tentacles on them or anything, but they're just minor functionaries or just junkies, or they're some zoned out faces in some club, and they are just as weird, and they have the same sort of damaged aspect to them as our nominal monsters, and I like that a lot in Henan Lotha's narratives. And if I had to rate Brain Damage within Frank Henan Lotha's filmography, I would rate it above Frankenhooker and above Bad Biology, and just below the original Basket Case. This is my impression that to me this film worked in terms of style and music. Really it clicked with me, and I could also see that Frank Henan Lotha, despite maintaining the punk attitude, is also looking to produce cleaner films, not in terms of like the rooms are clean or that there is less goo and things like blood being sprayed around, no, but in the sense like his directorial approach becomes more, you could say, classical, in the sense that the way he cuts from shot to shot and the way he captures the scenes, there is very little footage wasted. There is no coverage. It's all very, there is a sense of purpose guiding the things, which is obviously a sign of a very mature filmmaker who's well versed in the cinema and world cinema and film language. If you check out Henan Lotha's interviews, which there is one or two on YouTube, you'll realize just what a film encyclopedia he is. And I'm really glad I'm now discovering his work. I've yet to see Basket Case 2 and 3. I've heard they're a little bit less atmospheric, because I heard they were sort of made back to back or somehow as a package deal for home video. I'm not sure, but I will be checking those out eventually to see whether they fit into my growing concept of what Henan Lotha is up to as a filmmaker. I'll definitely be holding on to Brain Damage, because I just want to experience that the car junkyard scene again, which to me was one of the highlights. It was really well done, and it was like an example of interplay of good, well chosen camera moves and clever lights and judicious editing, and it reinforces this kind of grubby 80s exploitation vibe that Helen Lotter is after very well. I think the protagonist, when it comes to his more recent film Bad Biology, become even more alienated and just plain lonely, which reflects just, I guess, the way the world's gone since the rampant digitalization and everything. And it's very interesting to see just the levels of outpourings of just furious expletives and anger and just blind sort of this destructive energy, which seems to be at the core of maybe even the script of Bad Biology, and to see the nihilistic vibe this film carries over, shot in winter with reasonably few exteriors. And again, tendentially, if you were to line up like the three films, the Bad Biology being the recent one, and then Brain Damage in the middle, and going back to the first Basket Case, I think there is tendency to use less and less exteriors on location footage, because as a director, I'm sure Henning Lotter was after more control, and he had to balance out his love for the scuzzy authenticity of the streets at night or during the day, and he would have to trade that off against a bit more control to do, you know, better quality puppeteering or whatever he needed to bring his grotesque creatures to life. So he would be working more in purpose-built sets, especially as you watch the making of on Brain Damage. It's interesting to see just how little of the film was shot on live location, and how much of it is all inside this this purpose-built environment. Another little touch which impressed me about Brain Damage was the unexpected, to me at least, reference to H.P. Lovecraft, The Color, Outer Space. I might be wrong, but the finale with the police showing up, and there is that light shooting out the window and glowing light. It sort of made me think about that short story, and obviously that is also brings up Stuart Gordon's film From Beyond, which is one of my favorite 1980s movies. I wonder if there was a conscious reference there or not. I would like to find out, but that was the open ending of Brain Damage is also really probably my favorite ending of any Henning Lotter film, because it takes the film to the next level of abstraction and shows again the filmmaker's, I think, open-mindedness and ambition. As for Bad Biology, I think it's held up so well. I mean, the movie's about 15 years old now. I think they shot it 2006. Imagine that, 2006. And then it eventually got completed and got going 2008. And I think it's still a pretty radical film, and it has still the power to shock and offend, and the hilarity is still there. So I think that's going to be another evergreen film. And it shows such a refined style with very few setups. So for me, that was the biggest takeaway rewatching Bad Biology, was to see Henning Lotter's style evolution, how he's going towards more and more classical style, with every sort of camera shot pushing the story another a bit forward. So there isn't so much a play on camera angles to try and get more points of view of the same thing. It's more like we always want to move the story another story beat forward. So one shot more, at least one more story beat more, which is really how I wish more filmmakers would operate, rather than just dumping loads of footage on the spectator, which doesn't amount to much in terms of story.